He would use whatever tactic he could find to bash you over the head and shut you up. And that, I think, is very frightening. In a lot of respects, I think Marc Emery was a censor.
By 1984, Emery's political career was consistent. He had run twice and lost twice. Disillusioned with the NDP and libertarianism, Emery decided he needed his own political group. He joined forces with Robert Metz, a freelance accountant, to inherit a new party, the Freedom Party.
I decided that what Canada needed, and I was incorrect in retrospect, but what they needed was a political party dedicated to individual rights, which I didn't believe they had an effective one. And I again would spend the next 5 years of my life and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, $50,000 to $100,000 minimum on establishing a political party that I felt could reflect these values of personal responsibility, of individual rights, of personal freedom.
Marc was we called him our action director, which meant he basically instigated and began certain campaigns for the party. At the time, he was really adept at doing a lot of research. He was probably the only private citizen in London regularly receiving City Hall minutes and reading them on a regular basis, so he always knew what was going on in the city, and he knew who. We began the first few years of Freedom Party simply outlining a basic strategy, recognizing fully that a political party like Freedom Party would likely not be electable for at least 2 decades or better. So we had to set out what kind of goals can we set for ourselves that would build our credibility, that would keep us active in the community. And so as a registered political party, we became sort of a lobby group. And the very first campaign, in fact, that Marc launched while Freedom Party was in existence was the No Tax for Pan Am campaign.
Well, the Pan Am Games is a very major athletic competition, just a slight step below the Olympics in importance. Really, the controversy became very simply, should we be expending local tax money on a major athletic event such as the Pan Am Games? Is that something that the public of London supported or not?
What I believe to be the common feeling in the community is that the city government should be concerned with our streets, our roads, our buses, and not even our buses really, but I mean our streets, sidewalks, sewers, this sort of thing.
Emery spent $10,000 of his own money to stop the Pan Am Games, plus another $3,000 in private contributions. Most of the protests took the form of postcards that were mailed to Federal Sports Minister Otto Jelinek.
Marc wasn't in from day one on that. I think he sensed a groundswell of opposition, and he became the focus of it. He made himself the focus of it, and fair enough. But to say that he generated the opposition, I think, would be inaccurate.
Working together to protect our tax money, we can do something. My biggest job is not let the people get cynical. They have to be firm in their belief that something can be done. And there is still a lot of time, so we can do a lot.
It was one time Emery would be right. The bid for the Pan Am Games received its death blow in June of 1985 when Ottawa slapped a 5-year freeze on federal sports funding.
We are not quitters, and therefore we are not prepared to quit on this at this time. We are going to request an immediate meeting with Mr. Jelinek. We are going to request a meeting with the Ontario government officials.
I would expect that there should have been some advance warning and some advance information so that at least we could have had an opportunity of presenting our case.
The bid committee has a lot of time to go and get that money through lotteries and private sponsorships. I think it's still possible, and I've offered to help. They've got a $1,000 pledge from me already, should that be the case.
Well, that's great news, Kathy. We managed to lobby 3 levels of government and halt the spending of 110 million tax dollars on London's hosting the 1991 Pan Am Games. So we were almost taken aback by our own success.
Our second candidate tonight, Mr. Marc Emery.
Hello, my name is Marc Emery, and I have a number of things I'd like to tell you about that I think make me very qualified to be your choice as your alderman in Ward 3.
In the municipal elections of 1985, Emery ran for alderman again. The Pan Am defeat gave him the political ammunition for some strong attacks on his opponents. It would be one of his last mainstream campaigns, and the last time he would use conventional politics to try to change things.
And Mr. O'Brien did vote on December 3rd, 1984, to support the Pan Am Games with taxes, and it's just not correct of you, Pat, to say that you didn't. You did support it.
All right, now, okay, now just, Mark, I'm going to let you, you made your point, and I'm going to let Alderman O'Brien.
Okay.
The part of this forum, okay, is not to get into attacks on each other.
I respect what Mark is saying, and in some things he says I agree with him, but he has a tendency to generalize just a little bit. The record will show that I moved the most. In his eagerness to fight this, he failed to do his homework right to the end, and he made a conclusion which was very, very wrong, and I was happy to point that out to him, and he was taken aback. I remember his reaction. In fact, I have it on tape. He was taken aback when he was found out that he hadn't followed this through to its logical end, and he had no response, which is not normally like Mark. And I know that cost him some political support. The issue of whether to spend that kind of money for the Pan Am Games never came to City Council for a vote.
Gentlemen, I'm going to end
The voters weren't impressed, and Emery lost his third election. Emery was becoming frustrated with the political system as an instrument of change.
Mark wants to save the country single-handedly and almost believes that he can do it. Well, that's just not possible. And naturally, one is going to feel hollow about that and frustrated if one sets this arbitrary, artificial objective for oneself. Whereas what Mark did on an individual level surpassed anything I'd ever seen any other individual do. And yet he wasn't satisfied with that. So there's the tragedy and the absolute marvel of Marc Emery.
Here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. He doesn't care if you're rich or poor, he loves you just the same. Santa Claus knows we're all...
December 1986, and Sundays in London were the same as Sundays across all of Ontario. Most stores were closed by law. Emery had always disliked being forced to shut his store on a certain day of the week, and now he decided to challenge the Sunday closing law by breaking it.
We were charged 8 times for breaking the Sunday shopping law, and each time we did differently. The first time I was charged, it was because we opened on Sunday. The second time was we gave away books free on the Sunday before Christmas Day. We gave 2,000 books away free without selling any books, but we did it because we knew that even that was illegal. You couldn't even be Santa Claus on the day before Christmas was basically my slogan there, and it's true we got charged for that. I am going to open this Sunday, and I have every intention of getting charged, and by no means whatsoever will I pay the fine I'm going to get. I intend to go to jail.
Hang your stockings and say your prayers, 'cause Santa Claus comes tonight.
And so, you know, everybody would always challenge him and say, oh, no, nobody would ever go to jail over Sunday shopping. And he just said, oh, yeah, and so he proved the point.
I regard going to jail as being a very pivotal time in my life, too, because, you know, it hardens you. It makes you realize the consequences of when you exercise your freedom. You see, if you want to be a free man in Canada, you would spend most of your time in jail.
Emery had wanted to get arrested to prove that Sunday closing laws impeded his right to conduct business. He even sent press releases to police headquarters to announce his plans to break the law. But despite a list of charges and court appearances, Emery would spend just 3 days in jail. At one court date, a judge dismissed the case because the prosecution failed to prove Emery even owned his bookstore.
And the Crown in later charges decided that they would just not want to pursue this because it would only fuel all the publicity that I was beginning to get across the country, because I was beginning to show up on CBC television, you know, CBC radio, and various news organizations across the country were beginning to zero in on me as the advocate of Sunday shopping. And like all issues, I feel I was doing a better job advocating the legitimacy of opening up on Sunday than anybody else.
Emery promoted himself as the defender of free enterprise against oppressive laws. Donations poured in from individuals and businesses, but there were people who doubted the sincerity of Emery and his crusade.
Oh, a monopoly on nobility here.
Well, you've been Mr. Noble through this entire show about you're the man that represents the Maverick in society, you're the man that represents the business community. You do not represent them, and you unfortunately do not represent the poor people that have to work out there for minimum wage.
They work for me.
And they're the people that are going to suffer across this province in the next couple of years.
This is amazing. I'm the person that pays these people. Without me, they don't have a job. With you, they could still be employed. If you disappear tomorrow, no jobs are going to dry up. With me gone, they dry up. And if I don't have the ability to meet the consumers on my terms, those jobs don't exist. And I resent you saying that somehow you help people. You don't.
You know, you talk about a person being self-serving. Mr. Emery probably is the biggest self-server in the city of London because he wants it all his way. Like, you know, whatever Marc Emery wants, why, that's fine. I mean, you should have the freedom.
But the Sunday shopping battle had a personal cost for Emery.